Sewlush, easy projects fully explained. How to turn your embroidery stitch outs into a pouch or purse. Hi, I'm Christine from Sewlush, and I thought I'd do a video on what I do with my stitch outs. Because I like to embroider, I digitise my own designs. They're available at www.sewlush.org. And I sell some of these embroideries. I end up with loads and loads of stitch outs because I have to do probably 2 at least for each design to make sure that it stitches out properly or to make any changes on it. I end up with just absolutely loads of stitch outs, and it's pretty hard to work out what to do with them really. But what I've started to do is, you can see I've got just loads here as well. I've started to make some pouches, and these are easy to make. In fact, I have a separate video on pouches with covered zip ends. If you wanted to have a look at that, it shows you exactly how to do this, but it doesn't show you how to get the embroidery onto the front of the patch. These are lined, and quite useful. I mean, you could use a pouch like this for anything, I suppose, but particular things that come to mind are keeping dogs' things in it, like the dog's treats, dog's brush, dog's toys. But you could use it for makeup or for toiletries or whatever you like, really. The ones I do in the 5 to 7 hoop, that's 130 by 170 millimetres, come out round about this size, and the ones I do in the smaller hoop, the 4x4 or 100 by 100 millimetres, come out to about this size. I mean, you could make it even smaller by making the borders smaller, but I thought that was quite a useful size. You don't want them too small, really. So today we're just going to have a look at how I make these. I've chosen this little Jack Russell, and that's a 4x4 design, 100 millimetres by 100 millimetres. The first thing I'm going to do is just draw a little square around it. Now, it would be a lot quicker today to use my my ruler and my rotary cutter, but because I've got my ironing mat over the top of my cutting mat, I'm using scissors. So this is what we've got now. It's just a little square. Give it a bit of a press. And I'm going to be using this floral fabric. So the next thing I need to do is I need to cut some lengths to make the borders. I'm cutting my lengths 4 centimetres wide, which is 1.5 inches. So now I've got a strip, and I need to just cut it the same width as the embroidered square. And put those on, the top and the bottom. So I've now stitched those to the sides. I'll give it another good press. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay that onto the edging fabric and cut out a back. And now I'm going to apply some iron-on fusible interfacing to the back and the front. I've got some fairly strong interfacing. It's called Collar and Cuffs, and it's by Vilene. I'll just iron it on. So now I've got my fronts and back finished, and I need to use the back as a template to cut out my lining. I'm going to use this little offcut of lining fabric to make the zipper ends the tab for the hook. So to do that, I've already trimmed my zip so that it fits, and I've cut off the little metal pieces at the end and the start. So this is what I've done with this. I've folded the sides to the centre, and then I've folded it over again so I get that effect, and then I can use that to make my zip end. And I've done the same with the other one, and that's going to make my zip end. So I'm just going to stitch those on, and then I'll be back. I've now finished the zip ends, stitching those on, and I'm going to make the tab for this metal fitting to fit on. I'm using a thinner fusible interfacing because this one, when it's folded over, will be just too thick. So I just fuse it to the fabric, fold the sides to the middle, and then fold it over again. So that's what I've now got. And I'm going to stitch it down both sides and then put this little metal fitting on there. So I've now stitched this little tab to the metal fitting, and as you can see I've made a slight V shape with it and stitched across the V, and that's so that when I attach it to my pouch it won't be so thick to sew over. I won't have a great lump. I'll only have like 2 single tabs to sew over rather than that thickness. So now I'm going to take this over to my sewing machine, and I'm going to stitch the zip into place. So I've now stitched the zip into the front of the pouch. I'm going to give it an iron, and then I'm going to do the other side. And what I like to do is top stitch just from where the tab starts across the top here, and finish where the other tab starts. It's just to keep it from moving, basically. So now I've put the back of the pouch on, and I'm going to do the same. I'm just going to iron it and then top stitch it. So as well as top stitching across there close to the zip, I'm also going to just stitch this in, and I'm going to put it in the side, and then when I sew my sides up I'll catch that in the side stitching. But to keep it where it's supposed to be, I'm just going to stitch down that and make sure it's in place properly. So I hope you can see this, but I've now top stitched along the two sides of the zip, and I've also stitched this into the side seam, and I'm just going to now do the finishing touches to this. I'm going to match up the fronts and the back, and do the same with the lining. So that's what it looks like, and I'm going to stitch along here, up one side, across the top, down the other side, and then back to here, leaving a gap of about that much so I can turn it out. I've also got my zip unzippered so it's open, because otherwise I won't be able to get my hand into this side of the pouch. Okay, so now I've stitched around the pouch. I'm just going to cut some little squares out of the corners so I can give it a flat bottom. I'm measuring 2 centimetres up from the bottom, which is about 1 3/4 inches, and the same from the side, and then I'm just going to draw a little square. So now I've got all 4 cut out, and then I'm going to open up this corner and push the raw edges together, and then I'm going to stitch across those raw edges, and that will give the pouch a flat bottom. And before I put the lining into the bag, I'm now going to top stitch the hole close that I left in the lining for turning out. So I've now stitched that hole closed. I'm going to push it into the pouch. And push out the corners. Push out my tabs. Give it a bit of a press so you can see what it looks like finished. So that is now one thing you can do with your stitch outs from your embroidery. If you want more detailed instructions, go to my video, Zipped Pouch with Covered Zip Ends.